Welcome to the Dr. Janine Show. I'm Dr. Janine Bowring, naturopathic doctor, and today's topic is multiple sclerosis. So I'm going to talk about the causes, the symptoms of MS, and of course, some natural tips. So stay tuned right until the end of today's episode because that's when I'll share all of my best natural tips that I've used over the years to help people with the symptoms of MS and to slow down that progression of the disease. So what is multiple sclerosis or MS? Well, it is a chronic and usually progressive disease which affects the central nervous system, including the brain and the spinal cord. Now, this occurs when the immune system, so the T cells of our immune system, can attack the nerve fibers and especially the outer myelin sheath. And that is this, if this were a nerve fiber. So if you can imagine that this is a nerve fiber, on the outside we have a fatty coating and that's called the myelin. And this is really important to insulate those healthy nerve fibers and to ensure that the nerves are properly communicating and firing with one another. So when that myelin actually becomes depleted, this in a severe case is MS, and plaques can form along this because there's the sclerosing of this tissue and those lesions can happen. Now, the T cells are part of the immune system, but B cells can be involved as well, and they are the cells that secrete our antibodies. Macrophages as well, which is a type of white blood cell that engulfs other cells. It's like the Pac-Man and other molecules. These can all attack and degrade that myelin sheath on the outside of the nerve. So they can also attack the oligodendrocytes and the nerve axon. So the oligodendrocytes are producing the myelin and of course the nerve axons as well. Really important that we're protecting these tissues. And of course this attack, so it is our immune system is attacking this. So being autoimmune, our own immune system is attacking our own body. This can cause a lot of inflammation, and now the nerve cells become destroyed and the myelin is altered, and now the electrical signals and those signaling messages in the brain are affected in a negative way. And what MS means is multiple sclerosis. So sclerosing or scars and plaque formation, lesion formation on our nerve cells. So what are some of the most common causes of MS? Well, I'd like to start with mitochondrial dysfunction. So this is really important. If you've seen my other videos all about longevity and having a long and healthy life, it all comes down to the health of our mitochondria. And so actually our mitochondrial cells that tell our other cells and our DNA, so our genetic cells, what to do. And when our mitochondrial nanomotors are slowed down, this can cause the aging process, but also can cause the progression of different diseases. And the neurodegenerative diseases, such as MS, is one of those examples. We also need to focus in on our other hormones. So something called leptin resistance. And if you've heard me talk about leptin resistance, if you don't know anything about leptin resistance, please check out my videos all about the tips to fix this and why it's so important. And I'll come back to some of those tips when we talk about the tips for healing MS. You'll realize that there are some correlations with what I talk about with fixing this leptin resistance and the leptin signaling. This can be tied to our insulin and our insulin signaling as well. So insulin resistance is usually tied up with the leptin resistance if we're eating too many carbohydrates. If we have chronic high blood sugar throughout the day, this can also be a cause for MS. Now, another cause of MS is poor sleep. So recent evidence has actually revealed that the melatonin secretion, of course, our sleep hormone, is dysregulated in MS patients. So there is a suggestion perhaps that melatonin could be a potential target for therapeutic intervention. And I just want to have a little caution here that I'm not talking, in my opinion, about melatonin supplementation, so to take it as a pill. I've never really been a big proponent of doing that. I believe that there's a lot of danger with doing it in this way. So I'm talking about secreting your own melatonin in a healthy way and having a restful night's sleep because of your circadian rhythms is more the goal when we're talking about treating MS. But I'll come back to that when I get to the tips. Another potential cause of MS is EMF exposure. So if you don't know where your exposures are coming from in terms of EMFs, I'm talking cell phones, I'm talking Wi-Fi, I'm talking, all of these electronics that we have in our modern world, great for our modern conveniences, but not so great for our cellular health. And there's something called the voltage-gated calcium channels that when they are overexcited, they're flooding too much calcium into our cells. This then in turn will damage our mitochondrial cells. And we know because of keeping our mitochondria healthy as a part of staving off MS and other neurodegenerative diseases that this is really important, as well as low vitamin D. So I will talk a little bit in more detail about this as a cause for MS as well. Now, another cause of MS could be leaky gut syndrome. So we know that autoimmunity is very much tied to the attack on our myelin sheath, on our nerve cells, but this can also look back and be tied back to leaky gut syndrome. So that autoimmunity starting in the gut, the health of our microbiome is very, very important. And of course, when I talk about the tips, we'll come back to this as well. And toxicity. So we know that if our methylation pathways in terms of our own body's ability to detoxify are not where they should be in terms of being able to detoxify, especially heavy metal toxins, this can play a very important role, especially in our T cell function when we're talking about methylation. And of course, if we don't have great methylation status, this can be associated with the development of autoimmune conditions, MS being one of them. So if you're just tuning in, I'm Dr. Janine. I'm talking about multiple sclerosis today, MS, its causes, symptoms, and of course some natural tips and what we can do naturally to help the symptoms and to slow down the progression of the disease. We are streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. It's so great to have you all here. So I appreciate your comments throughout the show as well. If you do have comments, please make sure that you drop them in the comment section. Be sure to share this video as well and give me all the love that you can. A great thumbs up would be highly appreciated. Okay, now there is this whole viral connection to MS. So it's been researched now that potentially the Epstein-Barr virus, which is very common, and you may have heard of this back in high school, it causes mononucleosis. It's known as the kissing disease, can make you very tired. But 90% of the population has been exposed and actually test positive for Epstein-Barr in our blood work. So that's not surprising. But in some instances, it is actually speculated that our immune system can mistake those nervous system proteins as those viral proteins are in the Epstein-Barr virus. So this is called molecular mimicry, and the researchers have found that the viral proteins may look so similar to some of those nervous system proteins that it actually induces the mistaken immune attack on that myelin sheath. So that is one theory that's out there. And there's some evidence pointing towards that correlation between having that Epstein-Barr and, of course, that autoimmune factor. Now I'm going to share some of the early symptoms of MS. So starting in the eyes, and if you've seen my other videos, you know the importance of having healthy eyesight as it entrains our circadian rhythms, getting that natural sunlight in our eyes, very, very important. So for me, I want to start it off with the symptoms of MS when they appear very early on can be something called optic neuritis, or an inflammation of the optic nerve, which of course is at the back of the eye. And this is very common as an early symptom. Now, some people may experience some eye pain, there could be some blurred vision, and headaches can be associated with one of these early symptoms of MS as well. Now, this can happen on just one side, so in just one eye, and it can lead to partial or even total vision loss, so something to be aware about. Another early symptom of MS could be spinal cord inflammation, and this could be a partial transverse myelitis to be more specific. There could be some numbness and tingling and weakness in the arms, the legs. There could even be some bladder dysfunction and difficulty in gait or walking. So that could be, we know that there's inflammation happening in the body. That's part of that connection to the leptin resistance as well as this chronic inflammation. And one of the things that can be tested for in the blood for inflammation is your highly sensitive CRP. That would be a marker for leptin resistance, but also potentially for MS as well. So I don't want to scare anybody here, but at the same time, being on top of these things, if you're starting to see some of these signs and symptoms, it would be a good idea to follow the tips that I'll get to so that you can naturally get on your path towards better health and, of course, to not develop MS in the first place. Another common early symptom of MS could be some bowel problems. So this could range from constipation to diarrhea, lack of physical activity at the beginning of the disease because you're just not feeling well, you don't have a lot of energy, could change some of the bowel habits. And there could be a neurological component as well, as the nerves are becoming damaged and affecting the bowels and your evacuation. Another early symptom could be change in moods and low moods and depression, difficulty with having clear thoughts. There could be fatigue, so just an overall feeling of malaise and fatigue, and there could be chronic pain. So this is part of the nervous system. There's something called a band-like pain around the chest, and it's called the MS hug. So it feels like there is, these painful sort of squeezing sensations in the chest can be related to MS, and that has to do with the nerves actually are short-circuiting and not firing appropriately, as well as other painful conditions like in the neck, in the arms, in the legs, and in the feet as well. Another early symptom of MS could be some sexual problems. So there could be decreased arousal and orgasm, and this is because the central nervous system is affected, and some of those nerve pathways could become damaged in the process of developing MS, as well as other psychological factors. So if there are mood changes, even a lower self-esteem, that can affect sexual desire as well, but can circle back to, the nervous system and the central nervous system and that whole connection between what's happening in the outside world versus the inside world. There is some disconnect happening. So really important in terms of, if you've got any of these early signs and symptoms of MS, to definitely be on top of things, get yourself healthy, do everything, that you can to be back in connection with nature. And of course, I will share those tips. Now, some of the most common symptoms of having MS in general, so once the disease has started to progress, is numbness and weakness in one or more of the limbs. There could be electric shock types of sensations, and this can happen often in the neck and the upper trap region, so in this region of the body. There could be some shaking, so tremors happening, lack of coordination, even the way that you walk, so an unsteady gait is very common in MS sufferers. There could be a partial or complete loss of vision, and of course the problems can, get a little bit more progressive in terms of sexual, but also bowel function and bladder function could be lost as well as those neurons are degraded. So if you're just tuning in, I'm talking all about multiple sclerosis today, MS, its causes, symptoms, and of course some natural tips what we can do about this. Now I'd like to discuss something very interesting. So MS and the sun. So there is definitely a correlation between sunlight exposure and MS. So in this study, it was actually, looking at living in areas of more sunlight, so that ambient UVB. And this was looking at, childhood and the development of MS later on in life. And what they found was, they were looking at children aged 5 to 15 and then 16 to 20. And what they found was that living in high UVB areas before MS onset was associated with a 45% lower MS risk. So what that means is that for, children that had that sun exposure, and especially in the high summer time sun exposure of that UVB, this was also associated with a reduced risk of developing MS later in life. So more sun exposure as a child, very protective for MS. Now, another study showed that each degree of latitude increase was associated with a 1% increase in the odds of having relapses over the previous year for MS sufferers. So what that means is that the further latitude that you are away from the equator, the higher your risk of having those relapse symptoms if you are an MS sufferer. Therefore, as I've said a lot before in my previous content, that, natural sunlight exposure in a safe way is very, very important in terms of being preventative, but being proactive for MS as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so let's talk now about the foods to avoid. So in terms of prevention, but also if you do have MS, caffeine is one on the list. So you don't want to overdo it with caffeine. It can be a bit of a stimulant, which can be good in terms of stimulating brain activity. But too much caffeine, of course, will deplete you of your essential nutrients and your minerals. So that can work against you in terms of your electrical conductivity in your body, especially your magnesium. So that's important. Sodas and soda pops, depending on where you live, is important to avoid as well. Not only the phosphorus in there, but the added sugars is not something that is great in terms of our overall health, especially if you do have a neurodegenerative disease like MS. The seed oils, trans fats, so things like margarine, as well as canola oil, any vegetable oil. These are very, very inflammatory for the body, and they will mess up our cell membranes. So this is something that you absolutely need to avoid. For anyone who's watching this is for everyone. This is just something that we should not be ingesting. And you've got to watch for these because they're hidden in a lot of foods. So not necessarily that you're cooking or baking with these yourself, but hidden in other foods that you may be purchasing. So packaged foods, baked goods and things will have most times, or if you're eating greasy foods and fried foods, most times they will be using these very inexpensive and very disease-causing oils. So just do your best to avoid them at all costs. And alcohol. So certainly if you're overdoing it with alcohol, this can be detrimental for your nervous system. So that's another thing to avoid. Refined sugars, refined grains, also very inflammatory. Gluten being a big one, very inflammatory, can be compromising for that leaky gut syndrome as well. So that would be another food to avoid. And of course, artificial sweeteners. So the artificial sweeteners that are more chemically based can really mess up your microbiome, and having that healthy microbiome is really important because especially as that's related to autoimmune disorders, really important for MS sufferers. Now, what are some healthier food options? What's the better diet for someone who has MS? Well, I love grass-fed meat, so it's always about the health of the animal that you're eating, and grass-fed butter as well. These can be very anti-inflammatory and very healthy for you and provide a lot of healthy nutrients that your body needs, as is seafood and fish. So this is something, whether it is shellfish or actual fish. I've got other videos because I know everybody's kind of thinking, well, fish is toxic. There's so many heavy metals and things. Well, that can be true. Depends on the type of fish that you're actually ingesting. So I've got other videos on the best and least toxic types of fish, so make sure you check those out. As well as healthy fat. So I love avocado, I love coconuts and coconut oil, as well as olive oil, but making sure that you're using these in the right season. So what you're eating and when you're eating and where it's grown and at what latitude you live in makes a big difference in terms of your body's ability to use the nutrients from food. So that's getting back into your mitochondrial health. And avocado eaten in season is a great thing for giving you some of that natural vitamin E as well, but also a healthy fat, which we know we need healthy fats for that myelin sheath, as well as healthy fruits and vegetables. We need those polyphenols, we need those antioxidants. Again, eating in your local environment, so foods, fruits and vegetables that are grown locally, and of course in season is the best way to do this. Fiber, increasing your fiber, ensuring that you're having proper bowel movements, very important as well. And probiotics, so live foods, very important in terms of MS and fixing what's going on in terms of that maybe unhealthy microbiome. Now, in terms of diets for MS as well, there has been some research done most recently on fasting and fasting mimicking diets and keto diets for MS, and there's some promising results. So, for instance, in one study that was done on mice first, and then they looked at humans, was that the fasting mimicking diet, which is basically having a very low-calorie diet of 800 calories on day one, followed by some days of extremely low, So it's not that you're completely not eating, but a few days. So from day 2 to day 8 of having just 200 to 350 calories per day. And then the food was stepwise reintroduced on day 9 to 11. So that sort of mimicking of that fasting state was very helpful. Now in this study, they also looked at the keto diet. So some of the participants were having just 50 grams of carbohydrates. So the keto, high fat, 160 grams or more of fat and less than 100 grams of protein daily. And they looked at the results. So what they found, and this was done on MS patients that had relapsing and remitting MS, that there were clinically significant improvements in the health and disability scores after just 3 months. And the people in the fasting mimicking diet, so really dramatically reducing their calorie intake over that period of time, did better than the people doing keto. Now, the people doing keto got good results as well, but the fasting mimicking seemed to be just a little bit better. So really, really interesting to know. Now, that what was speculated was that the fasting and also the ketogenic state helps to stimulate our longevity proteins. So this can be related to autophagy. We know that when we're in that fasted state, we go into our body's cleanup mechanism, which is autophagy. And this has been proven to help with longevity, but can really help with MS as well. So there's something interesting called the mammalian target of rapamycin. If you've heard about mTOR, this is a powerful inhibitor of autophagy. So mTOR, not so good. We don't want to have too much mTOR. A little bit is important, but too much is not a good thing. And the mTOR and something else called AMPK, they are both proteins that play prominent roles in maintaining homeostasis and are also implicated in some less favorable states such as cancer, obesity, neurodegeneration, and aging. So what the benefit of doing fasting or these keto states is that the fasting suppresses the mTOR, but also increases the AMPK, which is something that we want because AMPK by its nature is anti-inflammatory and it's involved in glucose regulation. And we know that if anybody who studied longevity, you know that when your glucose is dysregulated, you will age much more quickly. So, looking at some of those correlations and those speculations with fasting, autophagy, mTOR, AMPK. I just find it so fascinating that, those correlations now potentially with MS as well, it just seems to make sense. So yes, doing some intermittent fasting, maybe you want to try the fasting mimicking diet. That's something that you can definitely look into as well to stimulate that autophagy, definitely going more towards the less carbohydrates, less grains, more of that keto lifestyle can be very helpful if you do have MS or for the prevention of developing it in the first place. If you're just tuning in, I'm Dr. Janine. Today I'm talking about MS, causes, symptoms, and of course I'm getting to my natural tips. I appreciate a thumbs up, and if you're new to my channel, please subscribe and click that bell to turn on your post notifications so you always get my newest and latest uploads. Okay, let's talk about some of the supplements for MS. And I could spend days here talking about supplements, but I just wanted to focus in on a few which I found, in terms of some of the most recent research are very promising. And one of those is ginkgo. So ginkgo biloba, studies have shown that it helps to increase blood flow to the extremities, especially the ocular blood flow. So remember, one of the early symptoms of MS could be some issues with the eyes. So stimulating that blood flow to the eyes, very, very important, again, because of my research on circadian rhythms and sunlight in the eyes, that connection with our brain, our central nervous system, to turn on our internal battery and to turn on our mitochondria. Very, very important. So that's one of the reasons why I love ginkgo for this reason. As well as turmeric. Now, turmeric we know has neuroprotective abilities, and a lot of studies have shown that. So potentially for MS as well. Ashwagandha, being an adaptogenic herbal medicine, really important in times of stress to help the body to react to that, and it helps to calm down the nervous system as well. So ashwagandha is another herbal medicine that I love. I also love DHA, so a high quality omega-3 fatty acid fish oil supplement. Often this is the way to go. In my opinion, it's the better way to get, highly concentrated and non-toxic forms of that DHA, and it's something that I take every single day, as well as vitamin B12. So when we think again about our nerve fibers, we know that that outer myelin sheath on our nerves is reliant on having enough B12 as well as DHA. So we have to have enough of that omega-3, the B12, and this is so important to make sure that we have our healthy nerve functioning. And I'll discuss a few more supplements when I get to the tips now. So here are my 9 natural tips for MS. And stay tuned right until tip number 9, because this is one that it's usually tied into mind body that you may not have thought about. Okay, tip number 1 is to ensure that you're getting your eyes as healthy as possible. So one of those herbal medicines is bilberry, which I love. It's a specific antioxidant to help with our eye health, but also that DHA. So DHA concentrates in the back of our eye. It is that concentrated omega-3 fatty acid, often from fish and often from a fish oil supplement. I promise we'll put some links below if you're looking, to get more information about DHA. Tip number 2 is to limit your EMF exposure. We know that magnesium helps to protect our cells from too much of that calcium flooding in through the VGCCs. So limit your exposure to EMFs. I've got a bunch of other videos on how to protect yourself from EMFs, little hacks that you can do in your home, in your office to protect yourself. So make sure you search those up and look them up here on my YouTube channel. Tip number 3 is to fix your leptin resistance. So of course, following Mother Nature's prescription, which you've heard me talk about before, natural sunlight exposure, getting enough sun in your eyes, on your skin, moving and making sure that you are moving your body, very, very important for making sure that you don't develop MS in the first place. As well as tip number 4, which is optimizing your mitochondrial function. One of the things that's interesting here, depending on where you're at, maybe you have been diagnosed, is to look into deuterium depleted water. So I've got other videos on that. Very, very interesting. Really helps with your nanomotors in terms of your mitochondrial health. So that may be something that you consider. Tip number 5 is to eliminate those grains, the carbohydrates, the refined foods in the diet. And, scroll back a little bit. I talked about some of the healthier foods to focus in on, one of them being seafood and fish, to help with your mitochondrial health as well, but to help with MS. Tip number 6 is to improve your B vitamin status. So vitamin B12 is a big one, the other B vitamins as well. Finding, the natural whole food sources for these vitamins is very important, and sometimes a whole food supplement will really help to fill in the blanks here for those deficiencies. Tip number 7 is to fix your leaky gut. So I have other videos on how to do this, but often a full body detox, getting rid of heavy metal toxins, parasites, candida, some of, that nonsense that can happen in that unhealthy microbiome. You want to focus in on cleaning up that internal milieu and getting enough of those good guys back in, enough of those healthy probiotics. Tip number 8 is to support your healthy immunity. So beyond the sunlight exposure, getting enough vitamin D3 is very important for MS sufferers as well. And tip number 9, the mind-body connection. So typically, if you're having issues in terms of mentally and spiritually, energetically, not being able to move forward in your life, this can be correlated to MS. If you have an inflexibility in your personality, in that, strong-willed, strong-headed, that could be part of that manifestation of MS as well. So something for you to think about. So today we talked all about multiple sclerosis, causes, symptoms, and natural tips, what to do about this. I hope this video helped you. Please do share it with your friends, someone that you know who may be suffering. This is, something that you can do as a gift to them to help them on their healing journey. I hope that you've got some questions or comments for me. Please drop it in the comment section below and give me a big thumbs up. I truly appreciate all of your great feedback. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe and turn on those post notifications by clicking the bell. Everyone has a calling in life, and one of mine is to educate you how to live your life in tune and in line with nature. Thanks for watching.